Welcome everyone to episode 4 of the Alignment Gap. Today we're joined with Brady Kruse, Masters of Public Policy student here at the Sanford School of Public Policy at Duke University. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Happy to chat about AI on a nice snowy Saturday and maybe have class on Monday. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Kind of before we kind of get right into the questions, can you just do a quick introduction for us, kind of why you're interested in the space in general, what experience you have with it, all of that stuff.
Sure, happy to do so. My name is Brady Kruse. I grew up in a small town in Missouri. I got my undergraduate degree in computer science because that was a way off of the farm in Missouri. I got about junior year and I realized that I love writing code about 4 hours a week and not 40 hours a week. So I decided that software engineering was not going to be for me. I had done a lot of research into space. I published a couple papers on convolutional neural networks and robotics. And I was really, really interested in how technology, especially AI, is interacting everyday people. Like how does it affect my grandma or my mom who doesn't understand the technology at all? I applied to Masters of Public Policy programs with plans to kind of do like a cyber policy scope. Ended up at Duke. Sanford School is a great place to do it. There's some amazing professors doing excellent research. And I actually have my master's already. I actually graduated and I'm actually in law school now. Several of the people I worked with were lawyers. I found that I thought like a lawyer, and I took some classes at Duke Law. And so I'm actually across the street now over in the law school, but still doing very cool AI work and being involved with the tech policy lab.
That's super cool. Yeah, I guess kind of we'll go straight into the questions then. And I guess the first kind of area that I want to address is kind of the kind of bias within large language models, within artificial intelligence in general. And could you kind of, give us your take on what kind of it is about machine learning specifically, or I guess, the way that LLMs are currently designed that kind of amplifies prejudice, for example, or why kind of prejudice exists within these data sets, etc.
Yeah, a lot of it starts with the training data. Bias kind of runs throughout. It's almost inevitable, and there's always that like ongoing question of, well, humans are also biased, and so the goal is like if we're going to use AI to replace some human involvement, both are going to be biased in some way. Unfortunately, you want to choose one that's less biased, or at least have some like meaningful review mechanism, so that way you can account for that bias when it happens.
Right.
Um, Training data is a main place that it starts. Oftentimes, this training data just is not very representative. So there's an example like if I train an LLM all on data like Twitter feeds collected in the United States, it's not going to be very good at evaluating like sentiment or what the message is trying to be conveyed of someone from a different part of the country, like a Middle Eastern speaker or something of that nature. So the training data that's not very representative. You also have engineers can sometimes insert their own bias, probably subconsciously. It's not often on purpose, but things like, you train a model with some kind of expected result, and you might tweak things and make parameters different to try to achieve that result. And it's not malicious, but it does happen, and that does create and preserve biases throughout. Another thing is also if the training data, not only if it's not well represented, but also if it's just like generally poor quality. There's been a lot of discussion about bias when it comes to like facial recognition technology, like surveillance cameras. They are horrible at identifying people who aren't white. Basically, anyone who's not white, these technologies are awful at because not only is their data not representative and it's not doesn't have enough data subjects, it's also like many times being trained on really grainy, low quality images, like the lighting is terrible. And it's just a mess and it leads to actual harm for people. There's I forget what drugstore company it was, but they implemented this like nationwide surveillance program, and they would actually like have employees get a ping that was like, hey, this person has stolen from our store before, and they go escort them out of the store. And of course, it was targeted people of color disproportionately, and there was a massive lawsuit. It was a mess. So it's a huge problem. It's just throughout the whole thing. There's not one solution, and we're still trying to figure out how to deal with it. Or even if we can't, even if can we get rid of it entirely? I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I guess then kind of the following question to that is you mentioned that, bias is kind of existent in both algorithms and humans, obviously. That's kind of
Right.
something that's kind of difficult to get away from. Do you kind of see a future in which algorithmic bias is kind of less than that of human bias, or is that kind of unfeasible as well?
I'm not sure if we can ever make it like objectively less, but I think what we can do is we can make it more noticeable. And
Right.
that's why a lot of people who are interested in bias are now really discussing like meaningful review, right? So if, let's say there's like a housing application, right? And I'm a biased human, I make a decision on this housing application. That bias probably never like comes to light, right? Like
Yeah.
it's hard, it's subconscious. I can't express why I just did the biased decision I made. If you have an algorithm, though, ideally, like that comes out over time, and you can see in the
Mm,
output that this bias is there. And so, and you can also, ideally, it's hard to do, but you might be able to trace it down to like a couple specific factors that are like driving this bias. So if you
mhm,
have like some level of review, right, like a housing application, and AI denies it, that person actually has a right to go to the agency who denied them and say, I want like human review of this. That person might be able to actually like, track it down and figure out where it went wrong. So I'm not sure if we're ever going to get algorithms that are less biased per se, but maybe biased in more predictable and explainable ways. I think that could be a positive thing. The tricky
right.
part is no one wants to implement these review structures. It's they're few and far between, and oftentimes when Indeed or whoever it is like strikes out your job application, you have no recourse to challenge it and say, well, a human never actually looked at it. Tough. Which isn't it's not a great system.
Right, right. I mean, I think that's definitely an issue. Kind of why do you think that incentive is that people don't want to implement these review systems generally?
Um, there's a lot of things for companies not wanting to do this. For one, like it's time consuming. Truly, like with applicate like networks like Indeed or whatever, job applications is where this comes up a lot. A lot of job applications just get denied right off the bat by some AI model.
Right.
It's costly. It's costly. Every person who feels they've been wrong because they didn't get a job could ask for a review. It
Yeah.
also opens doors to liability because it does require some level of the company admitting, like, yeah, there might be a problem here, which could come up later on in like the lawsuit. There's actually there's a case, there's a gentleman named, I think his name's Evan Mobley. His last name's definitely Mobley, who was just rejected across the board for months on end by these jobs and found out that he was never actually getting human review. And he's actually now brought like a lawsuit against it, against like the middleman AI company they were using. And the judge allowed it to proceed, at least past the dismiss stage. I don't know if he'll actually win anything or if they'll settle. But that's also now a concern for these companies is a
Right.
lawsuit like that can at least get past the motion to dismiss. So that's there as well. Um, and like I said, it's just cheaper to rely on these AI models. And for them, it's like, you gotta break some eggs to make an omelet. And so some people get kind of screwed over. And the company doesn't have a lot of sympathy for it.
I see. Kind of,
Yeah.
I guess, moving into the domain of privacy then, because I know earlier you were talking about, surveillance, facial recognition systems, etc. Kind of very generally and broadly speaking, how do we kind of balance the need for data that you need, the ever-growing exponential need for data to train LLMs with these kind of privacy rights and kind of the rights of individuals who have created, work that is supposed to be unique or creative to them, all of these type of things.
Well, unfortunately, you said privacy rights. Unfortunately, in the United States, we don't have those. That's
Yeah,
very little. There's some Fourth Amendment protections. But the United States has just a completely different approach to privacy than like the EU, where privacy is actually like a right of yours. You have a right
right.
to erasure. You have a right to turn off cookies on your websites, what have you. It's just a totally different mindset. And so I think to answer your question, like it's I think what's really meaningful is when people at least know that their data is going to be used to train an AI system. I think if you can make that informed decision, like if you know, like if you told my grandma, hey grandma, when you buy something on Amazon, that data is being used to train an AI system, she probably doesn't care, right? She's probably like, oh, that's fine. I'm not really that concerned that Amazon knows that I buy a vacuum cleaner every couple years.
Right.
But I think what betrays people is when they don't realize that this is happening. They don't realize that their data is being collected and used for AI systems.
Right.
Um, and transparency is just such a buzzword. It's not everyone wants to talk about transparency. Everyone wants more of it. So it's not like a perfect silver bullet solution, but like it's at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But then the flip side, like you said, is AI does require like vast amounts of data, and a lot of this data that's like private but not really that sensitive, right? Is really useful. And frankly, like a lot of these AI models are actually like starting to run out of data.
Mm.
We're having a circular issue where LLMs are now being trained on blogs that were written by LLMs and published on Reddit, and now it's we're kind of getting like AI garbage of its training on itself. Um, so I don't have a perfect answer. I think a meaningful first step is when you post something on Reddit, it is going to be scraped and used by ChatGPT.
Right.
And if people know that, I think that that at least makes me sleep better at night. I'm like, okay, I don't really care if OpenAI takes my Reddit comment discussing, Breaking Bad fan theories or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off there.
So do you think kind of in a sense that a lot of this, how do you kind of get these AI companies, or how do you get, any sort of top-down policy approach where you can actually get these LLM companies to disclose when they're scraping your data? Do you think that's like
God.
feasible? It's possible?
Oh God. Right now, I'm not sure if it's possible because there's no recourse, right? Like it'd be I'm not even sure if Congress could legally pass a law that says like, hey, companies, you have to disclose when you're scraping data.
Right.
What this is eventually gonna kind of come out in a weird way. It's gonna be probably a lot of like IP copyright infringement suits, like fair use of can OpenAI scrape publicly available Reddit data, and then that I
Mm,
think is gonna eventually like trickle down to people realizing that this is going on. Um, the other the issue is even if we could like pass a magical law that's like OpenAI scraper tool has to tell you what websites it visits. Like it visits it visits every website on the internet, like billions upon billions of websites. It wouldn't even be feasible to like you'd have to put a disclaimer on every single website that's up right now of like, hey, this might be scraped. We don't know. And even if it is scraped, like, are they using it? Um, I think a lot of it's going to come down to actually regulating the AI companies to where they're only scraping and using data that they, for lack of a better word, should.
yeah.
And I'm not sure what that data even would be, but I think that instead of thinking of it a way of like we're gonna keep letting them do what they're doing and like just make it put out and like blaring, flashing letters of this is happening, going
Yeah.
the other way and kind of slowing it down on the other end. Um,
Right.
but it's tough. It's really tough, and the courts are gonna probably hack a lot of it out.
Yeah. 100%. I guess leading into that is kind of this idea of privacy, I guess more of a, moral consideration of privacy as compared to, actual legal, something set on stone,
Right.
but kind of talking about deep fakes in a sense. How do you see kind of the world of entertainment evolve, the world of disinformation and misinformation kind of evolve with the advent and the very accessible use to create deep fakes in today's age?
I am very anti deepfake. There's a stat like something like 90% or more of all
Mhm.
deepfake technology is just being used to create pornography. I mean, truly, like this technology does not have much productive use in my mind. I just don't think that there's many positive things that come out of making someone's face on someone else's body or making someone look like they're saying something that they're not. I guess
Right.
maybe if I was an actor and I wanted to act in a bunch of movies at once and I'm like, cool, use my image, that's pretty much the only one I can think of. So I'm very much just this is just an area that I just don't think we should go into. And states are trying to kind of cut down on the use of deepfakes, but like again, it's really difficult. There are some states that have laws on the books that are just specifically for like political deepfakes. Like there's
Mm.
civil liability for someone who makes a political candidate look like they're saying something that they're not.
Right.
And that's all fine and good, but like it's a really, really hard bar to reach. You have to prove the actual like causation. You have to prove that like some kind of damage ensued from it. It's hard. There are some states that have like non-consensual deepfake pornography laws on the books. Again, you can sue for liability, but you have to track down the person who made it. You have to show damages. You have to actually have the funds to get a lawyer, bring a lawsuit. It's really kind of an empty promise to have those things on the books. So I'm very just anti deepfake. I know that we're here. Unfortunately, there'd be massive First Amendment concerns if the government just tried to say you can't do them at all. Disclaimers are good. Little like community notes on Twitter or X is good. Like, hey, this is deep fake content. Um, I struggle to think of much productive use for it. If I could just if I had a genie and I could just make a wish that like this would just go away, that's probably where I'd start. Um, but we're here, and Sora is being used all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think the big issue is that they get more and more realistic as time passes, and so
Yeah, they get more and more realistic. They also get more and more like addictive. So Sora, the idea behind it is we're gonna have like TikTok or Instagram Reels of just like deep fake content.
right,
You can like make your, even if it's not being like distributed for any particular reason, it's just like that short form content that's super addictive and super like hard not to watch. And it's
yeah,
even like bleeding over into the other social media platforms. So that's like another issue of like our attention spans are already cooked. And now we just have limitless, like it's literally limitless. It can
right.
create it as fast as you watch it. Um, and yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, huge issue. I mean, I already know there's been cases where individuals have been harmed, but that doesn't even start to get to the tip of the iceberg in terms of the damage that has been and will be caused kind of by these platforms. So,
Yeah, and you only hear about the ones that who have the funds to like get a lawyer and bring a civil suit.
right.
It's happening all the time.
Yeah, 100%. I guess kind of transitioning away from this whole, privacy deepfakes area and kind of going into AI, what all people often call AI psychosis in a sense, and kind of how the personalization of AI, which many people say is a good thing, also has a lot of risks attached to it, a lot of malicious intent attached to it. And so I think people often just consider that, oh, AI can be my personal therapist, it can be my personal education assistant, it can be my personal whatever, but they
Yeah.
don't really consider what kind of the like bleeding harms that actually come about from there. I think the first question I kind of want to ask you on this is, what kind of potential issues do you think occurs, have we seen, etc., when individuals form like emotional attachments to artificial intelligence?
We've seen a lot. The names are escaping me, but there's been several stories. Wall Street Journal has posted a couple. There's been several lawsuits of people who develop these like very deep, unhealthy connections to their AI friend. There was one gentleman I who had a history of alcohol abuse, mental health struggles, who essentially became incredibly paranoid, and his AI chat GPT best friend would continue to encourage him, like, oh no, you're not being paranoid. People really are out to get you. It ended with him killing his mother and then committing suicide. Um, awful, awful. There's things of some LLMs are being marketed as like they're being marketed as your therapist, like it's being trained on this to specifically act as a therapist. And so instead of seeing an actual licensed mental health professional, people are relying on these. Now, not to just be all doom and gloom, I do think that there might be some positives. Like it can be cathartic to talk to ChatGPT, and like when I was stressed out about law school grades, it was like, hey, would this be okay? And ChatGPT is like, yeah, you're gonna do great. I'm like, okay, well, I feel a little bit better. And there aren't enough mental health professionals out there. They're not all the time like cost. Many people don't have the funds to go find them. So I don't think it's all bad, but I think it needs to come with some very, very strong safeguards of when people are crossing the line into harming themselves, harming others, like legitimate psychosis, hallucinations, like have clearly not they're clearly out of bounds. I think the responsibility falls on these LLM companies and developers to put into safeguards to like stop the conversation and fully disclaim like, hey, I'm not a therapist. I'm an AI model. I cannot help you with this. Um, I think that's maybe a step in the right direction, and those safeguards are starting to come. But it's oftentimes like a game of whack-a-mole. Like there's a new way to break it, and then they put in some new safeguards, and then someone else finds a new way to get around those safeguards. And
Right.
it's just sad because it's real people being really hurt. Um, and I hope in the end it ends up being, for lack of better, like worth. I hope they eventually fine-tune these models enough to be effective therapists in that way and not
Yeah.
lead people down dark paths. Um, I just have to have the hope that we get there.
Yeah, I think kind of the big concern that people have is that people aren't kind of seeking a lot of individuals who are especially in like, very vulnerable situations or very impressionable aren't seeking the real world connections and like relationships that I would actually serve them, a long-term benefit as compared to just, very conveniently, to be honest, right? Kind of going to
Yeah.
ChatGPT or, Claude or whatever and kind of getting these like sycophantic messages, which is also kind of, the downstream harm, I guess, of this is that a lot of AI, the issue with these large LLMs is that they kind of say what you want to hear in a sense. And so,
Exactly. Yeah, they're trained to do it. So there's actually companies out there that their whole like their method of making money is they have like little AI companions. They've like trained like Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, and she can be your friend, and you guys
yeah,
can talk. I don't, again, I don't like, I just don't see anything positive coming from that. I think putting a strong line of like, this is a tool, this is not a threat, right? This can provide mental health support or at least direct you in the right place, but it's not a stand-in for a therapist. And so these companies that are marketing themselves as like, here's your AI therapist, here's your new AI friend, that is problematic. That
right.
just needs to stop. That probably is running afoul of like actual like licensure requirements for like actual therapists. Um, yeah, it's not the best picture to paint. We'll see how it continues to progress.
100%. I think there was that platform character AI that where you can talk to
That
like
was
any
it. Yeah,
character
that's the
that
one.
you
Yeah,
you that you wanted to. And so, when people are super engrossed in like a film or a movie or a show or whatever, wow, I get to talk to, Elsa from Frozen or whatever. That's just kind of like there's a lot of downstream harms with kind of being able to access like whoever whenever you want, to the kind of deep emotional and like mental health attachment that we've kind of
yeah,
seen with a lot of cases so far. I guess kind of the second kind of area within this whole AI psychosis thing is within, critical thinking. And what do you kind of consider as, the widespread adoption of AI and kind of its effects on critical thinking, especially for, not just like, adults who are kind of getting AI ingrained into their systems and whatnot, and like, college
yeah.
students, whatever, but kids who are literally growing up on AI and never having to kind of think of anything really on a critical level as compared to just asking the AI who does everything personally for them.
Yeah, so I'm not a psychologist. I've not seen the papers that closely. I've just kind of heard rumblings from friends. My understanding is like the initial assessment is like really, really bad. People's critical thinking skills are decreasing at an exponential rate. And like, why wouldn't they, right? Like if I was a lazy kid in fifth grade who didn't want to write a paper and like ChatGPT could do it for me in 25 seconds, I'm, 11 years old. Of course I'm going to make that decision. Um, does not, and I think it's starting to trickle over into adults too. I'm finding myself doing it. It's hard not to, right? Like I'll
Yeah.
be writing code, and instead of like taking the time to like think through the code and like put it together myself, which I think has a lot of value to it, it is so much easier just to ask ChatGPT like, "Hey, I need a pandas function to do XYZ," and then copy paste it over. I don't feel good about it, but hey, that just saved me 30 minutes that I can now go spend elsewhere. And it's hard not to because that temptation's always there. So I think I think we need a lot of discipline in our education of limiting AI use. Now, I don't know how you do that because again, kids go home, they get internet access, they open up ChatGPT, no problem. But if you're an adult, you're listening to this and you have an urge to go ask ChatGPT a very simple thing, try to make yourself do it first. I think there is value in making yourself do it. I do think our critical thinking skills are being eroded here. Um, but I do think also that you can use critical thinking with AI. I don't think it's one or the other. I think that this can be a useful tool to kind of like fill in gaps, right? Like do like little monotonous things
Right.
for you. But once we reach the actual like critical thinking space, I think it's important that we do it ourselves just to keep our own facilities there, or else in the long term we're gonna lose them, and then we're gonna be really really in trouble. Um, but it's tough. It's always there. It's 2 seconds away, and it can probably do it faster than I can. Maybe not better,
Yeah.
but faster.
Faster for sure. I mean, I'm falling into the same trap as well. It's very
It's
easy to just
terrible,
go to
right?
AI. Yeah,
It's
it's difficult because like, yes, I know that like I will try to kind of do these things myself because I'm like, I will not learn, I won't do well on the test, I won't do, like long term, this is not going to serve me if every time I have any sort of problem, I kind of just throw it into ChatGPT. But at the
right.
same time, it's like I think it's kind of the mental aspect of knowing that ChatGPT is always there and I always have the option of kind of accessing that. Like, just I have to copy and paste something in. And I guess kind of like you said, there has to be a very, very concerted balance between managing your critical thinking and kind of thinking of things when you have to think of things in like a high level as compared to very
Right.
monotonous things like, ChatGPT fixing your syntax on code, for example.
Yeah, I think that's fine. If I'm just writing like HTML code or something or like JavaScript, just like I don't need to spend 3 hours to make a box the right size. That I'm fine with ChatGPT doing that.
Right.
And thankfully, there are some built-in limits as well. I'm a little hesitant of some of the capabilities of AI that are being touted. I don't I'm not sure that we're ever going to reach LLMs that reach like a fully independent, autonomous state of like I can tell it, hey, go write this bill like a novel legal topic, and it can actually do it. It can't do that right now, not very well. So if I'm like writing a long paper, maybe I can have it, find me one case or rewrite one paragraph at a time. But thankfully, it still has not reached that point of I can just completely trust it to do this entire independent project. I can't tell ChatGPT, build me a whole new web app from scratch and deploy it. It can't do it. But I can ask it like, hey, make me one little JavaScript item or object that I can then copy paste in. So, those limits are, I think, good. And I'm not sure we're ever going to overcome those limits. So that makes me feel a little bit better of like, there are some things that I don't think it will ever be able to do. That does require some critical thinking on our part to actually put the pieces together.
Yeah, I know in the last couple of weeks there was that agent that came out, a Claude bot, which and people were buying like Mac minis basically to just run this te quote unquote autonomous, thing to just do all its tasks
Yeah,
while they're sleeping.
I saw some rumblings about that. What actually happened? I just saw like a headline about it and was like, this has to be like satire,
Yeah, so basically, apparently it is, the, I guess, kind of the closest thing we have to
like
AGI.
agentic. But yeah,
Yeah, but at the same time, it's very limited. It relies on incredibly specific, like if you want it to do work while you're sleeping, for example, and like to actually do a task, you'll have to basically spend the whole day giving it instructions and like connecting it to all your like Gmail accounts and like all of these
yeah,
different things that you kind of needed to access and all of these things. So it's not agentic in the sense that, most people would consider it to be, but I think it's definitely, a very alarming step towards that area of like, oh, this can actually kind of work autonomously in a sense, more than I guess traditionally we've seen LLMs can do. So I guess that's a little concerning, but it's definitely not at the level where I think, there's any true autonomy in a sense,
yeah,
associated with it.
yeah.
I guess the next, yeah,
I
sorry,
was
go
gonna
on.
say a lot of companies are actually investing heavily in this idea of like agentic AI. Like this, it can do things fully on its own. It can manage your calendar. It can do X, Y, Z. Preliminary results are terrible. Like it is so bad at everything. There
Right.
is I forget it where this is published, but a lady like had an AI agent. She's like, find me a flight or something like that. And it found her like it ended up like purchasing, not just finding, like purchasing like the most expensive, like first class flight to like a wrong city, and it's like she couldn't get a refund. It was just a mess. It's so
Oh
bad.
dear.
It's terrible at it. Agentic AI is it's I'm I'm leery of it. I hope it never actually comes to fruition, truly. I mean, I guess the idea is fine, but I'm not sure that we're ever actually gonna get there. Well,
Yeah.
maybe.
I mean, I guess we'll kind of transition into, artificial general intelligence kind of as a big
Yeah,
topic. Right now it's definitely not anywhere close to, what people imagine to be artificial general intelligence. So like the whole like Terminator and whatnot. But
yeah,
kind of, do you even think it is technically possible for AGI to be created at the end of the day? Because, there's a whole range of individuals stemming from people who just do not ever believe that AI has like AI will always be a pattern predictor. And there's people who
yeah.
believe that AI will have the capability to kind of, scale and become this thing that is fully autonomous. Kind of where do you see yourself in that?
I think it is technically possible, but not for like millennia. This is now getting almost into like science fiction. Like at the end of the day, like look, we're a combination of particles, atoms that move in predictable ways towards the laws of physics and biology. Is that theoretically possible to recreate? Absolutely. Like I think if you knew every law of physics and you could actually account for all the trillions of things that happen, and you had the supercomputer the size of the galaxy, like I think you could. I don't think we're going to get there with what we're currently doing. I don't think LLMs are ever going to reach some level of general intelligence. There's a phrase, they're sometimes called like a stochastic parrot, right? Because that's exactly
Yeah,
what they're doing. They're probabilistically choosing the next token word, and they've gotten very advanced. They've gotten very good, and it's incredible what they can do. But they're not actually thinking in any like meaningful way. They're not actually like intelligent or creative or anything like that. They only know what they've been trained on. Which,
Right.
one could argue that's how we operate too, right? Like the English language is a series of probabilities of words that go together.
Yeah.
But I think that there is something more. I'm not sure if LLMs and what we're currently doing is the way to get there. I don't know what OpenAI is cooking up beneath the surface, but that's their multi-billion dollar bet is all the investment they're getting right now. It's circular. It's all going, cloud companies are investing in OpenAI, who then gives that money back to the cloud companies. Their massive bet is we're going to reach AGI soon, and
Yeah.
that's going to make it all worth it. I am fully expecting a bubble to burst. I don't think I think that we are millennia away from ever getting there. This is like a science fiction concept that I think is possible. We are never going to see it. In my opinion, if I'm proven wrong, I will eat my words. But for now, I think that we're not gonna get there.
Yeah, and of course, the kind of AI ecosystem and the kind of web of different companies involved in the whole AI ecosystem. If you kind of there's like charts of it, it just looks like a
That's
whole like
crazy.
entangled
It's
web.
crazy.
It's
It's
a
yeah, it's what it
yeah.
is. And
Um,
it's I mean, and it's amounts of investment that's like mathematically impossible to ever actually recoup. Like
right.
no company has ever. OpenAI's valuation, I think, is like 8 billion or something like that, and they have like hundreds of billions of dollars worth of like
Yeah.
future investments. And I'm like, where? And they've never been profitable. I don't, they don't, as far as I know, they don't have a plan to. So maybe AGI will happen and they'll become profitable. But for now, not sure.
I mean, I think so. What they're trying to do right now is IPO quarter four at a total valuation of I think it was 800 billion, but
800, okay.
their revenue is, down. It's in the
That's it.
single digit billions.
That's it. Yeah.
And they over the next 10 years they have $1 trillion of spending commitments,
Yes, that's it.
which
It's
is
crazy. And
ridiculous.
it keeps going, it keeps going up. They sign more
Right.
deals every week. Oof.
Like
Um,
I mean their bet is that, no matter what, this is never going to be actually like economically profitable at the rate it's going. The only way that it
yeah,
can ever kind of, pay off all these debts basically or these spending commitments is if they reach AGI, which I
right.
mean, in frank honesty, in that case, I'm not sure how much this money means anyways if we do hit AGI. So I'm not
Yeah.
too sure about that. I guess the kind of the question there I wanted to ask was that do you currently see a big race to the bottom with these very big frontier AI model companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and XAI and all of these companies kind of what harms does that create with this, I guess, race to the bottom in a sense?
When you say race to a bottom, do you mean like removing safeguards and just being like
Yeah.
developed? Yeah. Um, actually, in this regard, I've kind of been pleasantly surprised. I think some of them are racing to the bottom. Like Grok, I think is racing to the bottom. I think Grok is like known for removing all sorts of filters. There's been a lot of
Right.
very problematic things on happening on
Yeah.
X, formerly Twitter. People in replies like asking for deepfakes in the replies. There's one involving underage actress from Stranger Things, I think. I think they're racing to the bottom. I've actually been like kind of pleasantly surprised by OpenAI and others in the sense that, when something terrible does happen,
Hmm.
like the example I gave of the gentleman who became very, very paranoid, killed himself and his mother, they at least try to they don't just shrug it off and say, I got too bad, right? Like they at least try to put in some safeguards. Public backlash does force them to like put in some safeguards, and it is getting better. Like the safeguards are getting harder and harder to get around. Not impossible. There are always going to be new ways. It is unwilling to talk about certain topics that it once was. It is getting better at detecting when someone is approaching an area that they should not be talking about. The problem is it's all very reactive and it's all in response to public backlash. There's nothing
Hmm.
internal. I don't think there's much internal process going on of trying to be proactive and doing this before it happens.
Right.
If the media companies weren't putting pressure on them to do this, I don't think they would. I don't think they're that moral. And like I said, it's all very reactive, but at least they're doing something. They're not just shrugging it off and being like, ah, screw it. Let Grok create deepfake pornography for whoever asks.
Right.
Um, so it's not quite a race all the way to the bottom yet. Maybe kind of like a gradual decline.
Yeah. I know, there's companies like Stop AI, Pause AI, all of these different companies that are kind of calling for this massive slowdown of AI development without proper safeguards, without these kind of
Yeah.
proper processes involved. Do you kind of think that the public is there's a lot of, a lot of people don't believe we're going to hit AGI, but a lot of people who are in the space and, Geoffrey Hinton, all these big names who are, godfathers of AI, they do believe in AGI in a sense. Do you think people are worried enough about it? Do you think it's enough in the kind of public circulation, the public consciousness in a sense, or do you think people are kind of uninformed about it as of late?
That they're trying to like develop AGI and what those
Yeah,
consequences could be?
yeah,
It's a good question. I think the public is not aware of it as they should be. But I
hmm,
also think the odds of us reaching it are so low that I'm not sure that that's going to be a problem. Like,
right,
I think the people who just openly tout, you hop on LinkedIn and there's like 800 different finance gurus, right? Who are like, this is
yeah,
the next amazing technology, AI is, the best thing ever. I think those people are, going down the wrong way, but also I'm not sure how much smoke they're blowing, whether or not it actually makes a difference.
right,
I think the public should be more aware of it and aware of the risks. But like I said, because I don't think we're going to get there, at least not for a very, 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 very long time, I'm not sure that it's going to matter a ton if the public is aware of it. I think I'd like to see the public more aware of the harms that these AI models are creating right now and the things
yeah,
that are happening right now. That I would like to see more awareness of. I don't think anyone on the planet should be 500% gung ho, develop AI as fast as we possibly can. That is incredibly short-sighted and just is
right.
putting on blinders to all the harms that are happening. There are some people like that, though. I wish they were more informed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I guess kind of just talk about the harms, right? I guess the two areas that I kind of want to touch on is number one, economic displacement, and number two, the environmental harms. So in
yeah.
terms of economic displacement, kind of what have you seen in kind of the space of what AI can do and what kind of potential economic harms does that lead to?
Yeah. So right now the main thing that I'm seeing is like massive slowdown in especially technology sector, kind of in anticipation of AI. A lot of these companies are
Right,
slowing down their hiring because they're assuming that these AI models are going to end up being useful and end up being able to, take the role of a software engineer or something.
right,
So they're kind of like proactively slowing their hiring, which is making it really hard to get a job in computer science right now. But I think, like I said, I'm not entirely convinced that we're ever going to have like a fully agentic chat GPT software engineer. And so I think the economic harms are going to come home to roost in the sense that these companies have invested heavily in this area. One day they're all going to wake up and realize like, oh, this really isn't doing what we thought it was going to do.
right.
Some companies are starting to wake up to that and being like a bit more critical of like, look, we paid all this money for this AI system that's not really that helpful. And then their, share price dips and they've wasted all this money and they have not hired people who they could have been hired into roles at that point.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing. Um, I'm not, I think AI will replace some jobs, but I think it's going to augment more than anything.
Yeah.
Like even something like a paralegal, for example. There's a lot of concern like AI is going to replace paralegals. I don't think AI is going to replace paralegals because you still need someone to actually to knows how to use the model and who knows how to format the documents and who knows
Right.
what they're actually asking the model of. So I think it's going to be more of an augmenting role than a full replacement. I
Yeah.
think a lot of companies are treating it like a replacement right now when it's not actually going to be.
Mm.
And they're kind of wasting their time in that regard.
Do you think like at the current stage of what AI, how AI has developed and its current capabilities, you see software engineers even, for example, using, AI, albeit, whether it's a good thing or not, I'm not sure. But you already see people within like these different professions kind of using AI to augment their jobs. Do you think even if AI kind of development stopped right now and this was the maximum, kind of capability that it could have had, is there potential for economic harm or benefit, or kind of where do you see that?
The way it's being used right now, if the way it's being used right now, I think can be beneficial. I think it does help productivity. I think as long as we're using it smart and we're not completely trying to replace it with all of our, we're not trying to replace all of our critical thinking skills with it. I think right now it can be a useful tool. What
Right.
concerns me is that companies have overpaid significantly. They
Yeah.
have paid way too much for this technology that, they invested $100 million in a technology that maybe provides $10 million worth of return and they're going to wake up to that and they're going to stop
Right.
those investments and then the bubble is going to go kaput. I'm also not sure if the costs of running these models outweigh the benefits. So if we could have a chat GPT that like just existed on its own and there was no operating cost to it, I think yeah, I think it could be economically beneficial. I'm not sure
Mm.
if the return that it's making right now justify like the energy cost, the data center cost, the storage cost, all of that. And like I said, I think when companies realize that this product is not worth how much it's being pitched for, that is something they can't pay those operating costs anymore either. Um, so helpful right now until people wake up. I kind of think there's an AI bubble coming. We'll see though.
How far away do you kind of see that as?
Oh God. I'd say probably within the next 5 years, I think we're going to see some big changes. I'm not sure if everything's going to completely burst at once, but I think 5 years from now, I think some companies are going to be admitting like, yeah, this tool that we paid for is not as useful as we thought it was, and that kind of will, I think, will be the start. Um, I'm not quite like a big short investor. Like I don't exactly know when the housing market's going to crash, but I think that the bubble is there and it's going to burst probably within the next 5 years or so. It's going to start.
Yeah. You just mentioned, the cost in terms of data centers, in terms of energy, in terms of all these different things. Kind of as kind of the second to last question, how do
Sure.
scaling laws and generally how do the energy and, infrastructure costs of AI, what does that look like over the past few years, and where do you kind of see that going?
I think we need to learn to operate within our limits. I think in kind of the earlier days, using the energy infrastructure that we had and the data centers that we had was fine, and operating within our limits was fine. I think what worries me more is all the new construction that's being very hastily done in very underserved communities. There's a lot of rural communities now that are having issues with like water supply and energy grid that it is not prepared for because it's being rushed out as fast as they possibly can. And like I said, I think they're overpaying for them. I think we're going to build all these data centers and then people are going to use AI less heavily
Right.
and they're going to sit there empty and be useless. I don't think that on its face, AI using lots of energy and water is a bad thing. I think what the bad thing is making very hasty, ill-informed infrastructure building decisions that is going to end up being a problem.
Right.
But of course, even if we are operating within our limits, the environmental concerns are massive, right? Like it uses a ton of water, it uses a ton of energy, but at the same time, what doesn't, right? I think the issue is the scale, not so much the fact that it exists at all.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that a lot of it is targeted towards kind of countries, and a lot of data centers are being built. I mean, obviously, locally in the US, like in Arizona and states like Arizona, but obviously in
Yeah,
countries like Chile as well, there's been
yeah,
tons and tons of data centers just being built, kind of displacing indigenous communities. And I think the whole issue with data like labeling and all of these things with Scale AI and all of these other big, data brokers in a sense that's a whole different conversation,
yeah.
in a sense.
There's also national security concerns. Like I've heard rumors of like wanting to build data centers in the Middle East and like countries that like aren't the friendliest with the United States. I'm like, do we really want to be storing a bunch of our data in
Yeah,
these countries that maybe are not our best friends? That makes me nervous. But I guess it's a good place to build. I don't know.
yeah. I think the big thing is that even though the U.S. government seems to want to have a big stake in AI, a lot of it is being
Right,
directed by private companies, as we've seen over the last
right.
few years.
Who
So,
probably don't have our best interests at heart, unfortunately.
yeah, unfortunately not.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, last question before we kind of end things off here. If there was kind of, one thing you could say to the average viewer watching, just generally about, the risks of artificial intelligence, where you see this heading, anything along those lines, kind of what would it be?
I think be disciplined in how you use and interact AI. Because like I said, the thing that scares me the most is it is so easy for me, a well-informed, educated person, to still open up ChatGPT and use it. And you
Right.
can use it, but be smart about how you use it. Make sure it's
Yeah.
not displacing your own abilities and your own cognitive function. And when you interact with it, be mindful. Like I have caught myself watching AI slop videos on Instagram Reels, and I have to stop and think like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, was this worth the water that it was used to make. No, absolutely not. So I think if we're more disciplined in that regard, we can kind of self-regulate. If everyone recognizes that deepfakes are bad and stops using them, I think they'll go away. Will that happen? I don't know. But for you, viewer, that's what my advice to you.
Thank you. Well, Brady, thank you so much for the conversation today.
Yeah, Jen, this was
It was
fun.
wonderful. Thank you.
Good deal. I'm glad we got the timing worked out finally.
Thank you.